So here's my chapter 1034 reaction video. If you aren't caught up, again, pause everything else to get caught up. This is the time to be caught up. Before I get into it, I just want to highlight that I've been pretty on point with the chapter predictions. A few weeks ago, I made a video saying, where is the CP0 at? They're just chilling on this island. And then literally that week, the CP0 was like, alright, let's get Robin now. Then last week's chapter lined up with my Zoro and Cursed History video. And last week I told a viewer on Instagram that I think chapter 1034 would be about Sanji and his realizations about his powers. And boom, here we are, chapter 1034, the title Sanji versus Queen. There was definitely a lot of interesting things going on. First, the chapter title image. It's interesting timing on Usopp being depicted using a gun. Wonder if that timing is significant, considering it looks like it's placed on Wano and there's a bunch of minks, and right now in the Flower Capital there is an actual festival going on. To be honest, I usually didn't think much of the chapter titles like these that were requested, but then I thought there's probably thousands if not millions for Oda to choose from, so he could just handpick ones that fit his narrative and drop foreshadow wherever he'd liked. Just a thought. Obviously some requests are for fun, but who knows with Oda. That being said, getting into the actual chapter, I know this is a little brainy, but because of my health focus, I can't not think of these things. But when I read the setting placement bubble, Skull, Dome, Left Brain Tower, Pleasure Hall, I was thinking it'd be cool if the location of where people were in the skull played relevance to actual anatomy, but I'm pretty sure the pleasure region of the brain is in the center. And I think people like when I'm just literally running through my thoughts unfiltered as I read the chapters, so I'll just say it now. I know people have brought this up before, but this skull on Onigashima is huge. Like, there are ore-sized numbers running around the skull as if the whole place was sized for them. Has any One Piece creator size-scaled Onigashima, or has Oda provided anything for that? Because in the back of my head, anytime Oda brings back up the setting of the place and shows the skull, I'm just like, whose skull is this? We can't be given this and shown this like it's nothing. This is a massive skull with horns, so it's literally an Oni that not just dwarfs giants, but also the ancient giants that we've seen. Like, wasn't Oars the continent puller? So does this skull belong to bigger Oars, otherly known as Boars, the planet puller? Also, Onigashima had a giant sword implanted into it. I don't know about this situation, but if that was Boars' sword, how do you go about beating him with that? But so the reason I brought this up was I keep having this recurring thought that the Void Century power levels, or the ancient power level ceilings, was so much higher than anything we've currently seen in One Piece. Like, Kaido might not hold a candle to some of the threats present in the Void Century. And this skull is an example of why I get that feeling. Can you imagine any crew, no, not even, combine like everyone at Marineford? I'm not seeing them taking on my boy Boars here. Like, look at this image in the first panel of the chapter. That is Momo, that tiny little worm on Onigashima, and Kaido and Momo are the same size dragons from what we know. And Kaido looked massive. Probably as a dragon, he's the biggest character we've seen. And Boar's skull still completely dwarfs them both, like combining them both. Like, Kaido would be an actual insect to Boars. But okay, going back to chapter 1034, on the next page we have Momo declaring that he's going to man up and try to stop the island at the minimum. While reading this, I realized the voice that played in my head for Momo was wrong, since this is the older Momo, so that means his whiny kid voice is probably like a deeper whiny voice. So focusing on the actual power aspect here, it's good that Momo can't just auto-learn how to make flame clouds. It'd be a little annoying if Momo could just do everything that Kaido could do with zero training with his fruit, but he learns that he can interact with the flame clouds that Kaido conjured. These flame clouds are so interesting. Like, does Kaido have to constantly maintain all the flame clouds, or once he conjures them up, are they there and he's just guiding them passively? And Momo is physically pushing against Kaido's direction. I wonder if Kaido can notice this intervention. These flame clouds are really interesting. But now we get to the most interesting part of the chapter, Sanji versus Queen. And it opens up with Queen using Sparking Queen and a corresponding panel paralleling this with Sparking Valkyrie used by Ichiji, Sanji's brother. Then Queen uses Henry Queen, which looked like an electric shock and paralleled with Henry Blazer used by Niji. And later on he uses Winch Queen, which was Winch Dalton used by Yonji. And so Queen was saying he can use all of the Germa techniques. Queen says he acted like he didn't know about the Germa techniques, but in reality he uncovered all of the secrets. Queen is trying to demonstrate once again that he was the top scientist, saying Judge's peak science doesn't compare to Queen's. He is showing this by using all the techniques, and I'm guessing in a more powerful way than Sanji's brothers. Queen claims he can copy anything Judge created. Then Sanji goes to say that the man that Queen fought on the live performance floor was not the same Sanji he's fighting right here, demonstrating what I was saying before when Sanji was initially doing his tactical retreat to gather himself. He just needed to process the changes his body underwent and his mental resolve, and that seems like exactly what happened. Queen's response to that situation was to show that he could even copy Sanji's stealth black technique and go invisible, and Sanji responds, but not with his own stealth, which I don't think he realizes how to use yet without the suit. So instead, Sanji goes super speed and moves so fast that Queen can't track him. So I have a lot to say about this back and forth, but I'll talk about it at the end since we're almost done with running through the chapter. This next part is that girl Osamu, the one that accused and had a bunch of people accuse Sanji of beating her up. We still don't know the truth of that situation, but it still feels very apparent that what we saw initially wasn't the truth of the situation. She is wandering a war zone for this mouse, and apparently Queen is an incel and gets upset that Osamu apparently rejected Queen based off of a lie, so he wants to give her more divine punishment. That's more than enough fuel to get Sanji completely fired up and redeem himself, because we know Sanji would die to protect any woman, and it doesn't matter who it is. And that's exactly what we see in the next few panels. Sanji's super fired up. Sanji realizes he has more tools now with his transformation, and I'll get back to this realization in a second. But so Sanji realizes based on the invisibility situation, Queen is probably the one who initially hit Osamu and caused the misunderstanding, and that's why Queen said more divine punishment. And then Sanji pulls out the full wombo combo, which is what we've been waiting for so long. This is what we missed of Sanji. He chained not one, not two, not three, but 5 insane level of attacks back to back all together. I think technically it might be 9 individual power hits. This is 2 pages in the manga, but we know this is going to be insane in the animations, like 5 to 10 minutes of animation. And he started off with a combo with an insane attack named Ifrit, which is an Islamic jinn that are said to be smoke-like beings made of fire. I'll dive deeper on that later on, but Zoro pulled out the Kala Sutra. Sanji used an Ifrit name move. I wonder if that means soon we'll get Luffy using a relevant godly name move. And the rest of his moves named are all anatomical and culinary references, it seems. That ends the chapter and announces a break next week, and that means 1035 will be the last chapter of 2021, which might mean an extra exciting chapter lined up for us. That being said, just revisiting some of the concepts in this chapter, starting with this panel where Sanji talks about combining his new tools to jumpstart his wombo combo. I think this line is incredibly important. Sanji says, if I pair the exoskeleton protection with my armament haki training, my legs should be able to withstand flames much hotter than before. So this means that Sanji's flames could actually burn him. I don't remember that being a mentioned recoil when he fought Jabra, and that because he learned armament haki, presumably during the time skip, that allowed Sanji to use hotter flames, which means that he has been controlling his flames, like it hasn't just been some random manifestation. The way he talks about it in this panel, it's as if he can will the fire hotter or colder depending on the situation, and that initially with his armament haki is what allowed him to dial up the heat, which makes a lot of sense why post time skip we are starting to see his leg go from just red hot to actually lit on fire. Then we add that the most recent addition was the exoskeleton durability, and that allows him to turn up the fire even more, which means the whole time he has been tempering his heat to match his durability. He has been holding back on his fire control because he would suffer if he made it hotter. So we probably will see Sanji stress test this heat in this fight, and we might get some more insane firefights now. The other part of this that was interesting is that armament haki was said to be an invisible armor, but in this context, it also seems to have a versatile amount of protection. It can protect against fire and heat. This definitely was never really a highlighted use of this ability, and I'm wondering why we didn't see this when Odin was boiled. That would have made that situation make way more sense as to how Odin was able to survive for 1 hour in the boiling water, and showed us another use of armament haki. Were we not shown that last use of armament haki to hide by this detail, but because of this use of armament haki, it sounds kind of similar to the other manifestations of armament haki I talked about in my elemental haki video, and even as recently as my devil fruit boats float video. And then connecting the fire itself to willpower, I think all of this supports my elemental haki theory, and Sanji being the avatar idea even more so. It's interesting because Queen just demonstrated that he can copy all of Germa's abilities, and Sanji showed this fire control first, but Queen has not demonstrated this ability yet. It'll be interesting to see if Queen copies this ability, but it doesn't seem like he can't because he seems so surprised that Sanji can control fire like a Lunarian, and asking Sanji if that was a part of Judge's science also, probably because he had never found that in his research of Germa's science. At this point though, it seems like this proves that Sanji's fire abilities are separate from the Germa double six techniques, and that makes sense since Sanji learned this technique probably from Zeph, who is named Red Leg when he was a pirate, so Zeph probably knew how to manifest red flames on his leg also. But even more than this, throughout the chapter, the fact that Queen was able to replicate all of these signature abilities from Germa double six tells me that those abilities we saw weren't necessarily part of their genetic modifications, but instead of abilities they can withstand and control because of their enhanced superhuman bodies, but enabled by their raid suit tech. I mean, it's not like Queen could just genetically modify himself in the same way that the Vinsmokes were, but he is still able to use most of the abilities. There's an interesting side note here that Sanji is able to seemingly vanish and go stealth black without his suit, and he is demonstrating similar stealth without actually being invisible like Queen. I wonder if that is a parallel in the abilities. The fact that Sanji has access to his abilities he has now, it sounds like my idea that I expand more in my Sanji video is still making a lot of sense. This video will definitely be released as soon as possible. I will bring up an interesting detail about Sanji that I'm not sure if it means anything more, but in the context of observation haki video and elemental haki theory, it's really interesting to think if it was actually meaningful. So before I finish talking about the rest of this, I just want to say I am loving these chapters, and again, the timing of my videos and the chapters are kind of insane. It just so happens I'd be putting out my Sanji video at the same time as a Sanji chapter, and Oda decided to put a break week after just so I can get extra time to make my Sanji video with less pressure. It's almost like, here you go Parvision, I'll lighten your load since you just got legally married and it's your birthday. So in response, I just want to say thanks Oda, I really appreciate that. That being said, it definitely feels like the next chapter is probably going to have emphasis on Luffy. Will we see that name move from him? It's going to be really exciting. I'm really enjoying making these chapter reaction videos, and if you guys enjoy them too, consider supporting me through Patreon or by buying my merch. Also, definitely share my videos with your friends and make more connections and help me make more connections. And join my Discord. I'm loving the conversations we're having there. But getting back to the last things I want to talk about, there was this interesting detail. You guys remember the clone fruit that Bon Clay had? Apparently, despite seeing the Straw Hats twice, he had never taken Sanji's presents. I'm pretty sure he had taken everyone else's present, but not Sanji's. I wonder why that he took all their presents except Sanji's. Was it because the clone fruit would have exposed Sanji's secret early on? We may have found out more about his powers and origins that we could have handled at the time. It's even more interesting because Sanji and Bon Clay fought against each other, and at no point was he able to take Sanji's face. I wonder if there's a special interaction between Sanji and that fruit. Also, in another point was that Bon Clay had to touch to clone people's faces, but Higurashi seemed like she didn't even need to touch people to copy them. That sounds even more interesting in the context of my observation haki video. Anyways, thank you for watching. I'm looking forward to connecting with you all again on the next Parvision.